man, white, heterosexual. How are privileges protected? Often invisibly.
The first of the strategies, I think, is denial. Denial in the sense of denying the reality of things, denying the facts. For example, if we talk about the climate crisis, there will always be people who will tell you, no, there is no climate change, there is no climate crisis. Why? Because we don't want to change our behavior, because we believe that in the short term the cost is too high, it requires too much effort. And the fact that there are already dramatic consequences in some poor countries, well, that too we can easily deny or simply not think about it. When we talk about household chores, for example, which I think is the number one cause of arguments in couples, if a woman reproaches her partner for not taking care enough of domestic tasks, parental duties, administrative tasks sometimes, and then the mental load that often comes with it, the other person will deny it to defend themselves rather than really facing the problem. He will deny the facts and he'll say that, yes, he does a lot of things. He takes out the trash. He does this, he does that. It's a way of avoiding the problem, not facing it directly, shifting the blame and buying time. Another example in the workplace, if you ask men whether they think there is sexism in their own company, inevitably they will say, no, 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 there is no sexism here. There used to be, it's always in the past, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there was sexism. Today, all of that has been resolved. And then, in the same company, you offer an anonymous questionnaire to the women in the company and ask them the same question. And there you'll see that they will tell you that, in fact, there is sexism on a daily basis. Sometimes there is sexual harassment, sometimes there are sexual assaults. But all of this is denied by a kind of blindness that we as men have. We can have this blindness because since we don't want to see these things, they become invisible to us. And that's my case, for example, when I think about sexual assaults on public transportation. What we call frotteurs, the guys who come and rub up against women, touch them, and so on. Personally, I've never seen it happen. Yet, given how widespread the phenomenon is, and considering how many times I've taken public transportation in big cities, it must have happened right in front of me several times without me realizing it. Because obviously, as a man, I'm not as sensitive to it. And so, obviously, since I'm not aware of it, it's easy to deny it. If it doesn't exist for me, then it doesn't exist. I don't see it. I've never witnessed it. Unless, of course, I go looking for information about it, especially from the victims. Well, it's the same with racist innuendos. Racist innuendos, homophobic innuendos, anti-Semitic ones, and so on, are all things that can escape our notice if we are not part of the social groups who are victims of them. So this allows us to deny the phenomenon, to question the words of the victims, to downplay the importance of the phenomenon, and thus to say, for example, that they're exaggerating, that they lack a sense of humor, or that they're too sensitive. It's not that we are too insensitive or lacking in sensitivity. It's the victims who are too sensitive. Very often there's a phenomenon where things are viewed from the perspective of the dominant group. So why do we question the facts? For example, when I was telling you about a survey in a company, the men who see the survey results will very often start by saying, yes, but were the questions asked properly? Is the result statistically valid? Yes, we asked all 200 women in the company. It's indisputable. They will start looking for all sorts of reasons to question the result. And then when the facts are really brought out into the open, we still tend to observe them even more from the dominance point of view. That is to say, if we learn that there has been a racist or sexist act or some innuendo, etc., around us, we start to wonder if in the end, maybe it was just an accident, maybe it wasn't intentional. So we observe the fact, the event from the perspective of the person committing the discrimination and not from the perspective of the recipient who is suffering, who is in difficulty. And that's how we, men, white people, will first think about the problem, as if to minimize it, partially denying the fact because if it wasn't intentional, then in the end, it's not that serious for the victim. It doesn't change anything for them, but from our point of view, it seems less serious. So in conclusion, I think that for us, when we belong to favored privileged groups, there are only two ways to react. Either we choose to stay in a deep state of denial, we continue to ignore the facts before us, to minimize the impact of our actions, to flatly deny the reality we face, to look the other way, living in total denial, or we try to think about it. And to quote a phrase I really like from Desmond Tutu, the South African leader who fought against apartheid, he said, "When you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." I do not believe that any individual truly wants to perceive themselves as an oppressor. So that is certainly something very much worth reflecting upon deeply. Before we move on to consider the other 9 specific strategies for protecting our various privileges.